Is famous for many things, among them drive-through daiquiri shops. Daniel Phillips is in the newsroom with more on how this came to be.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Well, in 1982, David Irvin had an idea. The idea would originally be met with skepticism, praise, as well as controversy, and in the end, it would end up changing the shape of Louisiana, as well as its storied culture almost overnight. This is the story of the Daiquiri Factory, the country's very first drive-through daiquiri shop. It's the home of a used car lot now, and it may be hard to imagine, but it was here that a kid from Ruston, Louisiana, would introduce the country to the drive-through daiquiri.
You didn't have to pay bar prices, you had fast service, and you had a quality product. And if I could do all this to a drive-through business, I really felt like I'd have a home run.
While drive-up liquor stores had been around, the novelty of buying a drink from your car was new and possibly illegal. And after months of studying legal documents, the answer still wasn't clear.
It never said you could do it, but it never said you couldn't.
And as the saying goes, fortune favors the bold.
If I got away with it for a week and I wasn't arrested, it was legal.
But investors and property managers seemed less sure.
No one believed that I was actually going to serve alcoholic daiquiris in a drive-through window.
However, on a big empty lot, with an oyster bed driveway, a metal shed, and a misspelled sign, the nation's very first drive-through daiquiri opened for business.
Opening day, I went to the store. I made all the drinks and everything, and had no business. I was sitting in there looking out the window of Johnson Street, all the thousands of cars riding by. No business. I was scared. I thought, oh my God, this is a nightmare.
At the time, Jay Walker was working at KRVS. Their client, a young, energetic David Irvin, and his business, the curious new Daiquiri Factory.
They were daiquiris. They were good. They were relatively inexpensive, and they were easy to get.
And it wouldn't take long for word to get out.
When they opened, they just decided they were going to market the heck out of it.
Everybody was bombarded with that spot, so you had to have heard it 50 times if you ever drove anywhere.
And that jingle just bore its way. I can still sing it for you 35 years later. The Daiquiri Factory, it's so good. You ought to drive in, you really should.
But as the popularity grew, so did the controversy.
I mean, I knew immediately that it would work. I also knew immediately it would some point in time cause a little bit of a problem.
Full of frozen taste. What a perfect way to celebrate.
I learned that controversy was erupting, about the business. So that was a surprise to me.
The Daiquiri Factory was a success.
We had a line of cars all the way around, all the way down the street. I mean, it was busy.
But the traffic problems on Johnson Street, as notorious for traffic then as it is today, soon caught the attention of the city government and former mayor Douglas Strapps.
There was some concern about cars stacking up on Johnston Street, which led into the Daiquiri Factory.
And the cups of alcohol being served, that had caught the attention of the police.
On one occasion, they were harassing my customers as they left my business and stopping them, doing sobriety tests and things like that.
Worried about business, David began a cat and mouse game with the city.
The way I countered that move was I put in a frozen lemonade. So then there would be a question as to whether or not everybody that left my store, in fact, had an alcoholic drink.
A game that would continue.
They were concerned about it, no question about it. And if I'm not mistaken, there probably was some debate regarding the presence of such an entertainment location or place.
Eventually establishing a precedent to what was considered an open container in the passage of a new city ordinance, prohibiting an open container in a vehicle.
I got a copy of the ordinance and read it and tried to determine how best I could operate within compliance of it.
But that presented a problem to the daiquiri people as to they're not going to serve a drink with a cap on it, so you had to be aware of the open container law.
David sent a letter to the mayor and the chief of police asking for clarification of what was considered an open container. No response. So he took it upon himself to decide what a sealed container was.
I thought about it, and I said, well, you know, it's got a perforated slot in the top, so if you eliminate that, then it's sealed.
By just simply putting a piece of tape over and not opening the straw, as long as you didn't put the straw in the container, then it wasn't an open container.
Worried that the passage of the ordinance would scare away business, David returned to the radio, this time for a big promotion campaign.
So I called a friend of mine that had previously worked in radio, and he came over to my office and basically got me half drunk and to relax me. And he looked at me and he said, without thinking, tell me what the grand opening is about. So my general manager was in the other office, so I yelled to him. I said, how many customers do we have on a Friday? And he said, oh, about 4,000. So as a joke, I looked at my friend and I said, hi, this is David Irvin, president of the Daiquiri factory. Does anybody in Lafayette have 4,000 friends? Well, I sure hope I do, because we're having a grand opening, and I don't know what they do at grand openings other than give away a lot of free stuff. So I'm giving away 4,000 bottles of champagne to the first 4,000 people that show up.
And show up, they did.
The Daiquiri factory, it's so good. You ought to drive, then you really should.
We started business that day, I think around 9 o'clock or something. The lines of cars started massing that morning around 5 o'clock. It was just bizarre.
The cars were lined up for an official grand opening of the Daiquiri factory. A free bottle of champagne to the first 4,000 customers who showed up, and an attempt for him and his employees to counter the new ordinance by the city.
I gave them all the option to work that day. I said, we all may be arrested that day. I have no idea. But if you choose to come to work, that's fine. If not, that's fine. But I will bring enough money to bail us all out of jail if that happens.
I didn't care. I went to work anyway. I mean, we were young, take a chance. Do something fun. Be on the news maybe if you got arrested.
It wasn't long before the place was packed, and with media crews present, it was a perfect time to unveil his solution to the sealed container.
So I went in the store and I came out with a styrofoam cup with a piece of masking tape over the top, and it was just so comical to me. It's like 8 cameras all zooming in on this cup.
The party was in full swing.
I can remember sitting outside the building was teeny, and we had like these concrete steps, and there was like a big, like a number 10 wash tub, and yeah, we just sat out there and drank champagne. It was fun.
But if traffic was troublesome on a regular day, this one would end in a nightmare.
There had to be a couple of 100 cars in both directions trying to get to that store.
The police were not amused.
It looked like the entire force and everybody that was employed at Troop I was there, it looked like. The whole side of the road was just full of state trooper vehicles. Then all of a sudden, in unison, in mass, they all just walked across the street, lined up shoulder to shoulder.
Driver's licenses were checked, citations issued, and the more citations issued, the more irritated people got.
All mayhem broke out. A lot of the customers in line were just infuriated at the idea of them, writing them a ticket where they're trying to patronize the business.
In the end, no one was arrested. But David estimates that around 40 citations had been issued.
I knew that I had to do something to get those tickets expunged, for my customers.
So the battle between the Daiquiri factory and the city would head to court.
Every one of them would tell me the same thing. I didn't have a case, or it's too controversial, and so forth. I went through 24 attorneys, and none of them would agree to do anything. Most of them wouldn't even take my calls.
The dust behind the now infamous grand opening had settled, and in an attempt to expunge the citations written to his customer, David was struggling to find someone willing to take on the city.
Mine has always loved controversial lawsuits. He loved being in the limelight. He loved challenging the law. So he was very, very interested in this.
J. Seymour, a legal legend in the state of Louisiana, would finally agree to sit down with David.
It was the most intense interview I've ever had in my life. This man is really, he would stare a hole in you. I mean, this guy was real intense.
But once the interview was over, Mr. Seymour would represent the Daiquiri factory.
But he never mentioned anything to me the entire time. I never knew what he was going to do or what the strategy was.
He was probably doing research or seeing where he could set new law and go forward with it and make sure that what he was going to file in the judicial system was the right paperwork.
And with the right paperwork and a date set, the day of the trial arrived.
Oh, it was like total chaos. It was like what would you see in the movies.
But it was just like something out of a movie for me. I mean, it was just a circus.
Midas had subpoenaed every person that had been received a citation that day. And as I remember, it was 40 to 50 people. And it was really funny because they were lined up along the median on Johnson Street.
News people all in the lawns rushing up trying to get comments, from all of us as we were walking in.
The tickets would end up being expunged, but there was a more permanent precedent set by that court case.
A simple tape around the cup to seal it.
The case set the standard for what would and would not be considered a sealed container and changed the landscape of Louisiana forever.
Daiquiri shops started popping up all over the state like anthills.
David was very brave, I think, at the time, what he did. He had an innovative future thought, and he moved on with it, which took a lot of courage.
It's still pretty unique to this area, which is kind of a surprise when you get right down to it.
It was a fun place to work. It was an anomaly, it was unique. So, and now they're all over the place.
There are now at least 10 Daiquiri stands in Lafayette alone, all of them taking their cues from a small metal shed with an oyster driveway and a misspelled sign that once sat at the end of Johnston Street.
I am sentimental, I guess, about all that, and it was just a vacant lot then, and now it's all of it's concreted in, and it's no trace of anything there, but the place is still there. That's where it all happened, right there.